It's really nice to be here. Every now and then, the world encounters a person with the credibility and the influence to change the course of a conversation. Today, I have the really wonderful, extreme pleasure of introducing Vanessa Nakate, who I believe is one of those people. As many of you already know, Vanessa is a climate justice activist from Kampala, Uganda. She began her activism journey in January 2019 at the age of 22 with a climate strike inspired by Greta Thunberg. She bravely stood with her siblings and her cousins at an intersection of crowded markets, holding signs demanding climate action. From there, Vanessa's determination only grew. A year later, she was invited to attend the World Economic Forum in Switzerland to help raise awareness of how climate change is transforming the Arctic. But Vanessa unexpectedly drew attention of a different kind when a news outlet cropped her out of an image with Greta and 3 other white climate activists. She immediately called out the injustice and made international headlines. Today, Vanessa is an instrumental force in redirecting the conversation on climate change to focus on the people who are most affected by the crisis, the poor and the marginalized. She's the founder of Rise Up Climate Movement and the Vash Green Schools Project, and today I'm really proud to appoint her to serve as UNICEF Global Goodwill Ambassador. Vanessa, UNICEF shares so many of your ambitions for our planet, for education and for women and girls. We're so lucky to have you as a partner and now as an ambassador. There has never been a more urgent time to be doing this work together. As we've seen in recent months, with heat waves all over the world, wildfires in Europe, floods in Pakistan, droughts in the Horn and the Sahel, and impacts of climate change are here now. Vanessa knows this all too well. She has just returned from visiting families and emergency workers in the Horn of Africa, where millions of children and families have been pushed to the brink of famine. Waiting for climate emergencies to happen before responding is a losing game. That's why UNICEF is calling on governments to meet their commitments to drastically reduce emissions and urging them to adopt critical social service systems on which children rely. In our work, that means delivering climate-resilient water infrastructure or installing solar panels in schools and hospitals. It means working with governments to prioritize children in national climate plans and strategies. And in everything we do around climate, it means working with children and young people, advocating for their right to a place at the table, amplifying their voices, and collaborating with them to fight for climate justice. I'm especially excited about our work with Fridays for Future, the youth-led global climate strike movement, and young women like Vanessa and many other young people that I meet on my travels as executive director really give me hope and energize all of our work. So to all of the youth climate activists out there, please know that UNICEF supports your calls for a better future, for your generation and for our shared planet. We're honored to work alongside you to drive inclusive climate action. So I'm thrilled to welcome Vanessa to the UNICEF family and excited for what we can achieve together. Before I hand things over to Vanessa, we're going to play a quick video message from some of her friends.
Congratulations, Vanessa, on becoming a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador.
Hey Vanessa, I want to send my congratulations to you.
Congratulations, Vanessa.
Congratulations, Vanessa.
Hi, Vanessa. Congratulations on being appointed as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador.
I have watched you speak in schools with so much love to these children about the impacts of climate change.
You are one of the people most caring about the people around you, the people in your community, especially the children and the girls and the women, to empower each other.
And I am glad that the world has someone like you who feels after those affected by the climate crisis and stands up for their rights.
You are one of the strongest voices and advocates for understanding and realizing that the climate crisis is a child's rights crisis, and really showing the world that the climate crisis isn't the problem of the future, but something that's already happening today.
Working with you, it's a pleasure. So thank you for that.
I hope that you will be able to continue your amazing work with highlighting that the climate crisis is a human rights crisis. I wish you all the best. Good luck.
Congratulations, Vanessa.
Excellent. And then Vanessa, we have this. Oh, this is for Vanessa. So she's officially a part of the UNICEF family. Good. Oh. Okay, great. Okay, Vanessa, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Executive Director Russell. It's a huge honor for me to be appointed a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. For a long time, I have known about the good work UNICEF does for children around the world, including in my home country, Uganda. Work on education, child protection, gender equality, all things I too am passionate about and have worked hard to champion in my own activism. But this appointment also feels significant to me in another important way. For so long, youth climate activists have been striking outside the halls of power. I started my activism in my hometown of Kampala, and I have marched through countless streets in many other countries since. As a student in Kampala, I was moved by the determination a fellow student was demonstrating a continent away in Sweden. And as awareness of Greta's weekly protest grew, and as her platform grew, she did everything in her power to extend that platform to others, including myself. This is now my job as well. I take this appointment not as a testament to something I have done, but as something that we have done, as a movement of young people. Yes, this appointment opens doors to halls of power, but more importantly, it expands the opportunities I have to travel to meet children and families most affected by the climate crisis and to amplify their stories on stages like this one. I have a story to share with you today. Last week, I went to northern Kenya with UNICEF to see and meet people suffering from the historic drought in the region, wreaking havoc on communities there. Much has been said about the impact the war in Ukraine has had on food security in this region, but far less has been said about another important factor in the Horn of Africa, and that is the impact of climate change, which has undoubtedly played a massive role. 4 consecutive rainy seasons have failed in the last 2 years, killing crops and livestock and drying up water sources. Forecasts suggest that the next rains are likely to fail too. This is the face of the climate crisis. This is what we have been warning about. The ongoing emergency in the Horn of Africa is depriving children of a meal, of safe water, of access to life-saving health services. It is keeping them from classrooms and forcing their families to move. In June, UNICEF warned that without immediate action, there would be an explosion of child deaths in the region, and this is what is happening. On Friday morning, I met a child in a hospital in Lodwar, the capital of Turkana Country. This is where the very worst cases of severe acute malnutrition are referred and treated. It was devastating for me to see when there are available solutions that can be put in place to stop children from suffering like this. Unfortunately, this child's family was not able to access the proper services in time for him to receive the treatment that he needed. By the time the sun set that evening, sadly, he had passed away, another preventable death. Another life lost because we acted too slowly. Our response to this humanitarian emergency is too slow. Our response to the climate emergency is also too slow. People are dying, children are dying, and it is difficult to talk about that. No child in the world today should die of starvation, and yet this problem is escalating and will likely continue to get worse at the hands of climate change as food sources perish from floods, droughts, and fires. People lose their livelihoods and families are being forced to migrate. I met an 18-year-old mother named Dorcas, whose 20-month-old baby, Mika, was malnourished. Dorcas told me that she had not had enough food to feed Mika since he was born, and tried to explain the pain and the stress of not being able to provide your child with something to eat. The drought means Dorcas has to travel so far to collect water that she has to sleep on the way before resuming her journey the next day. Thankfully, with support from UNICEF and their partners, Dorcas is able to visit a nutrition clinic where Mika can be assessed for malnutrition and receive life-saving, ready-to-use therapeutic food. She told me that without this support, baby Mika would not still be with us today. Climate activists often read about the impacts of climate change and the statistics that show the scale of the crisis, but my visit to Kenya allowed me to learn the stories of the people and the children behind the statistics, stories like Dorcas and Mika's. Across Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia, almost 2 million children like Mika are in urgent need of treatment for severe acute malnutrition. In contrast, UNICEF's 3-year appeal to help families and their communities in the region build resilience is currently just 3% funded. I have seen the impact that this funding could make. I saw how UNICEF and their partners are providing supplies and facilities for mothers to bring their children for treatment in the hardest to reach areas. I saw how the babies are weighed and measured to assess the level of malnutrition. How community health volunteers are supporting households to use special bands at home so they spot malnutrition early and take their children for further treatment. And I learned how we cannot save these children with normal food. They need urgent therapeutic nutrition to survive and recover. My experience last week underscored the importance of ensuring every child has access to safe water and can access treatment for malnutrition. We also need long-term funding to help families build resilience to the effects of climate change. I visited a community where UNICEF has supported the installation of a solar-powered borehole and water pump that supplies taps close to homes and a school. This community has had no rain in 2 years. But with these taps, they are able to give their children safe water to drink and for washing. There is even a garden at the school where they are growing watermelons. This project is keeping children in school. But some of the impacts of climate change are now irreversible. There is only so much a community can adapt to. This is deadly clear in the Horn of Africa. This is also deadly clear in Pakistan, where 1/3 of the country is submerged, impacting tens of millions of people. And it is deadly clear in my home country of Uganda, which right now is also suffering devastating floods. These countries did not create the problem, but they are paying the price for it. Governments that continue to invest in fossil fuels are doing this to the children of Pakistan. Businesses that continue to refuse to cut their emissions are doing this to the children of Somalia. Science has told us so. This is a self-inflicted disaster. We are doing this to ourselves, to our global brothers and sisters. The only silver lining is that when something is self-inflicted, it means you are in control of it. Governments and industry must listen to the science and follow the data, which is getting harder to ignore every day. We must reduce emissions, redefine development, generate real solutions for survival, and think innovatively about how we finance them. We must do this at speed and scale for children everywhere. The Children Climate Risk Index, which UNICEF released last year, found 1 billion children live in countries at extremely high risk of the impacts of climate change. 1 billion children pushed to the extreme, to the most extreme environments, though it isn't their fault. The top 10 countries in the risk index are all in Africa. We rarely hear about the daily struggles of the children in these places, in Chad, in Guinea, in Niger. The communities on the front lines only end up on the front pages of the world's newspapers when they are dying. And that is wrong. Most children and young people from the most affected places need to be invited to the room. We need to be listened to when we are there, and what we say should be taken seriously and acted upon. We are the ones with the lived experience, and the children and the young people are the ones who will suffer the worst impacts of climate change in the future. My journey mirrors that of millions of young people all over the world demanding climate action. The world does not want to hear about the damage our inaction is doing to the most vulnerable. But in this new role, I commit to representing children everywhere, but especially those from the most affected areas. I will stand in for them where they don't have a seat yet, and also on the tables. And I will tell their stories to those who have the power to bring real change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, and welcome, welcome to the family, as they say. First question of Valeria Becco from Italian News Agency. Please, Valeria.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you on behalf of ANCA for this briefing, and congratulations for your appointment. So my question is, women and girls make up the majority of migrants in the Horn of Africa compared to men and children, and this is a unique migration trend in the region according to a report by IOM. So I was wondering, how do you plan to tackle and to deal with this issue? Thank you so much.
First, thank you for that question. And I think what we're seeing, and Vanessa made some reference to this, is that women, children in particular, but I take your point on girls, are always the most vulnerable in societies, and they are the most at risk when terrible things happen, whether it's a war or a humanitarian crisis, a weather crisis, whatever it is, they are the most vulnerable, and those are the people that we are on the lookout for. But it is challenging for them. They depend most on social services. Those get disrupted in the context of a crisis. So it's a constant challenge for us, and I think for looking out for I don't know if you know this, but my background is working on behalf of women and girls. We at UNICEF always have a special eye out on behalf of them. But it's a symptomatic challenge everywhere around the world that women and girls are incredibly vulnerable to all sorts of threats.
Thank you. Pamela Falk?
Of course,
sorry.
of course. Sure.
Yes. When I was in Turkana, in one of the communities that I visited, I met the lady who was in charge of the water point that is provided by UNICEF. Her name is Mary. And she mentioned that before they had access to that water point, they had to walk really long distances. Some had to leave their homes. So many of the communities did not have people settling because they had to move. And she explained that because of the water point in the community, now people are settling in the community. That includes women, that includes their children as well. So I think one of the ways that we can ensure that women and children reduce on the migration, it's to ensure that the basic needs are available in those communities, that if it's water that is making them to leave their communities, then let's bring the water to those communities. That if it's food, then let's bring the food to those communities. So I think it's really about availing the necessary needs of the women and children.
Thank you. Pamela Falk, CBS News.
Thank you, Steph, it's Pamela Falk from CBS News. Thank you both for the briefing. So my first question is to Vanessa and then to the ED. You have served as a role model. I've followed you on Twitter. You've already had an impact in your work with UNICEF. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, what are you studying? What do you hope to be? Not that you're not grown up yet, but when you grow up. And as a role model for young women, it might be good to hear something about you. And then to the ED, UNICEF does so much on so many fronts. It usually may fall to someone else, but because it's about children, can you say if you're tracking any of the thousands of children that have been through filtration camps in Ukraine and are perhaps being adopted in Russia? Everyone is really devastated by that fact, and UN Human Rights is in a transition. Are you tracking it or lending your voice any way on it? It's not usually in the wheelbarrow of UNICEF, but I thought you, because of your background. Thank you so much, both of you.
Vanessa, please.
Great, thank you. Well, currently I hold a bachelor's degree in business administration, and I am thinking about doing a master's as well. Just trying to figure out. Just thinking about when would be the right time for me to do it. But on some of the things that I'm working on in activism, I've been working on a project that I started in 2019, and it involves the installation of solar panels and eco-friendly cookstoves in schools in Uganda. So that is one of the things I hope to continue doing in the future, to see more installations in schools in Uganda. We've so far done installations in 31 schools. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So sweet. I think today we're trying to keep the attention on Vanessa and the important work that she's doing. I will say just very briefly that we are doing a great deal of work in Ukraine. We are doing our best to get access to parts of the country that we don't have access to, which makes it hard for us to get certain information. I think as a general matter, UNICEF does not support adoptions in times of conflict or crisis because it's just always hard to make sure that we know where the children are coming from. So I think that it's an issue that we are certainly aware of, but I think I'll leave it at that. I do want to try to keep the attention, on Vanessa, sure. And happy if you want to contact the office too.
Okay. Alan?
Thank you very much for doing this briefing. Alan Bulkati from news agency RIA Novosti. Madam Russell, I have a question for you, please. This is regarding Ukraine again. The Russian permanent mission numerous times mentioned that they are addressing to the UNICEF regarding the so-called website Mirotvorets. This is a Ukrainian website which is disclosing the personal data of children in Ukraine. As to Russian mission, there are approximately 327 kids in this data of these kids displayed in this website. So the Russian mission is questioning why UNICEF is not addressing this issue. And the second question is about particular person, Faina Savenkova. This is a girl from Lugansk city, 13 years old girl, and UNICEF promised to meet her because her data were also included to this website, but didn't meet so far. So could you please explain why the UNICEF is not still able to meet this girl? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. It is an important question and one that I think we are certainly aware of and are happy to provide additional information to you. I think we are trying desperately to keep the attention here on Vanessa. Obviously, UNICEF has, we have concerns in many respects about what's happening in Ukraine as a result of this conflict. And as I said, for today, I think we're going to leave it with Vanessa, but happy to follow up more directly. I am aware of what you're talking about, and we're happy to follow up with you.
Great. Thank you all.
That's
Catherine,
it?
thank
That's
you.
it?
Well, please,
Great.
we hope to have you back here.
I'm gonna-
And Vanessa, congratulations again. Thank you.